You know, almost every project kicks off with what seems like a simple question, but it almost always turns into this huge, haunting mystery. What are we actually building here? And maybe more importantly, who are we building it for? Well, today we're going to crack that case wide open using a really powerful technique from Jeff Patton's book, User Story Mapping. And this quote right here from Jeff Patton himself, this is our central clue. Shared documents aren't shared understanding. We've all been there, right? You write everything down in this massive document, maybe a huge spreadsheet, thinking, great, this will get everyone on the same page. But what Patton argues is that these documents, they often just create the illusion of agreement, not the real thing. And that is where the danger lies. A product backlog, that giant to-do list of features, can end up feeling just like a game of asteroids. You think you have a good strategy, like, let's just break down every big idea into tiny little pieces right at the start. But all that does is fill the screen with chaos. You get totally overwhelmed by all the details. You lose sight of the big picture, and poof, the project dies a quick, painful death. So, this leads us directly to the scene of the crime. Let's call it the Flat Backlog Trap. Now, to really get a handle on this trap, Patton introduces us to a character in his book, a case study, really. Meet Gary. So Gary had this great idea for a product, and he was given some pretty common advice. Hey, just make a list of everything you want the product to do. They told him to create a product backlog. So Gary did exactly that. He made his list, and it grew and grew. He spent all this time meticulously prioritizing it, putting what he thought were the most important things right at the top. But then when he handed it over to his team, they were just lost. All they saw was 100 tiny disconnected tasks. They couldn't see the product. They couldn't see the user's journey. The very tool that was supposed to bring clarity had completely buried the why behind the whole thing. And that right there, that's our culprit. A flat backlog. It's just a one-dimensional list. It's basically a pile of bricks with no blueprint. It completely loses all the context, the narrative, the actual story of how a real person is going to use what you're building. Okay, so if the list is the trap, how in the world do you escape it? Well, this brings us to the next phase, the investigation. It's time to start mapping the whole story. And here's the secret weapon against that flat backlog. It isn't making a better, more detailed list. Nope. It's a completely different tool. It's a map. This is what user story mapping is all about. It's a technique where the whole team gets together and arranges all their ideas, all their features, their user stories, not in some long list, but in a way that actually lets you see a user's journey, step by step. Think about it like this. All your features are like scattered clues at a crime scene. A list just keeps them scattered. But a map? A map arranges them in order, it connects them, and suddenly it reveals the whole story from the beginning to the end. So how do we actually build this map? Well, we start by connecting the dots to create what's called the story's backbone. And the process is actually surprisingly simple. First, you just talk through the user's story. What are the big steps they take from their point of view? Then you write each of those big steps on a sticky note, and you arrange them from left to right in chronological order. You're literally telling their story with stickies. And this is what you get. See that top row of sticky notes? That's the backbone. It gives you the narrative flow. All the other detailed features and tasks are going to hang off this structure. And just like that, you've transformed a flat, boring list into a two-dimensional story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now this brings us to the real breakthrough moment. You've got this huge map of everything your product could ever possibly do. So how do you decide what to build first? You slice it. Right. You don't build the entire map at once. That would take forever. Instead, the team literally makes a horizontal cut across the map. They're looking for the thinnest possible slice that still creates a complete end-to-end journey for the user. And this slice, that is your minimum viable product, your MVP. See, it's not about building one feature perfectly. It's about building just enough of each step in the journey so that a user can actually get from start to finish and achieve their goal. It's a complete, albeit simple, version of the whole story. Patton uses this brilliant metaphor to explain it. Building feature by feature, or column by column, is like delivering a perfectly decorated layer of a cake, but with no frosting or filling. It's useless, right? But building by a slice, that's like delivering a small, complete piece of the cake. Another writer, Luke Homan, calls it half-a-baked cake, not a half-baked cake.
It's small, but it's a complete, valuable experience.
And this brings us to the ultimate goal of all this mapping and slicing. It's the real solution to our mystery. Case closed. Let's circle all the way back to the beginning. The goal was never to create a perfect document, or a perfect map, or a perfect backlog. The whole point of using stories and maps is to shift our focus away from just writing things down and toward actually understanding each other. Because the map itself isn't really the final product. It's the conversations you have while you're building the map. That's where the real value is. The map is just the artifact that gets left behind. Its real purpose is to spark discussion, debate, and alignment, making sure everyone on the team has the exact same picture in their head of what you're building. So ultimately, it really comes down to this. When you look at your project, do you see a flat list of features, just a pile of bricks? Or do you see the whole story, the user's complete journey, a cathedral? The map makes all the difference.
Subscribe to Lazy Reader. We're here to help you see the big picture.